Hey guys. So I haven't been on in weeks. So everyone's probably thinking I'm going through some dark night or something. And it hasn't quite been that. I know a lot of people have been struggling lately. And this video actually isn't going to be like my typical videos that I've been putting out, in the last couple years, where I just kind of come in and I channel whatever spirit brings to me. It's not that spirit didn't bring anything to me. It was just the message that I got was that I need to talk about my Kundalini Awakening, my experience. A lot of people are going through this right now, fresh. And a lot of people have been going through it for a long time. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's that when we share our experiences, we help each other understand our own experiences even more. So it's very important for us, for me personally, actually, to share my experiences with you guys, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to assist. Genuinely called. Nothing about this has anything to do with work or money or ego or wanting to be seen. It has nothing to do with that. I literally am the type of person who's behind the scenes, and I go most days without talking to anybody except for my kids and my partner. I'm very much isolated. I understand that's just an aspect of who I came here to be. But in the same respect, my throat chakra was blown open. And I know I'm here for a reason, and I'm literally called to do this in service. Somebody once asked me, like, what do you get out of it? Like, because I don't even take clients. I don't like taking clients. When I started taking clients, and this wasn't every client I ever got, but I started to notice a pattern where people were just coming to me so I could help them get with a person in a relationship, because I made a lot of videos in the beginning about twin flames and stuff. So it started like really getting to me, like, that's not what I'm here for. It's not worth whatever. It's not about the exchange of energy, like, where a client will pay you to help them with something. It was like, people not, like, I was trying to point those people within, and it was like I could see they were stuck, and it was like, I'm not here to heal, like, to do the work for people. Like, people have to do the work for themselves. And so the more I was taking on clients, the more I felt put off to do it anymore. We're to the point where, I don't even like being on the phone or like interacting, exchanging directly one-on-one with people anyways, like in my normal life. Like, I don't have a bunch of friends who I talk to on the phone all the time or go hang out with. Like, that's just not me. And so I was like, am I just doing this because I just need a little extra income because I'm a mother of 4, or am I doing this because this is what I'm called to do? And that's what everybody else, every other spiritual coach is doing. Like, they're taking on clients for some reason or another. So I was like, I don't absolutely need the money for survival. So I'm just going to do what I want to do, what makes me feel good, what really feel like that equal exchange of energy, where I come on and I make a video. People appreciate it. I know that because I get likes and comments and people share their experiences, and I feel that inside of me, and I feel fulfilled by it too. So the exchange of energy has nothing to do with money, right? And so like that was just kind of part of like me going through different things to help understand like what this is all about. Because of course the right side of my brain, the masculine side of my brain, wants to logically think, well, we have to immediately make something into some type of career. Well, that's not really, I started to learn very quickly that when you come in service, like, it's not going to look like the Matrix says it's going to look like for you. Like, when it comes to like what you're going to do in life, if you're taken care of and your bills are paid and you're like, those basic needs, just because we have to be in this matrix to some degree. We're humans on this earth and we live in certain places. We have to pay our bills and stuff. Like, if those needs are met, then and you're good, then what are you doing that sets your soul on fire? What are you doing that you're calling from spirit, right? So like I had to go through that learning experience too. Anyways, I wasn't expecting to talk about that, but I'm just going to talk about my experience today because I feel like it's going to help people, okay? So lately, the reason I haven't been on is because I've been so ungrounded. Even today, I'm like, am I going to be able to go on and just talk about my experience when I just feel like I'm floating in my fucking mind all the time? And it's very interesting because when I first got activated, when I met my twin flame, that's when I got activated and woke up my Kundalini. I was very ungrounded at that time too. And spirit had led me to go to the gym. I was going to the gym a lot. And it wasn't about like, a lot of times it wasn't even about like, oh, I want to look good. I want to have, be fit. I've always been fit. I've always been an athlete and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't about that. It was about being grounded because I was experiencing such a high level of activation. Just boom, like when you have that activation, it hits you really hard. And for me, my way of grounding was going to the gym because I was moving my body. I was getting that electricity moving through my body. Nothing was staying stagnant. Stagnancy can really mess with you. And then, so I made a lot of notes because it's hard when you're like talking about your experience and there's so many things you went through. It's just like hard to just sit and just go straight through in a chronological order and tell a story. So I'm going to go off concepts and I'm just going to go with the flow, and I made notes, and there is really no order to operation, but I'm just going to go from topic to topic that I feel like people need to hear right now. I wasn't going through some dark night of the soul lately. I'm just ungrounded. I'm integrating. I've learned so much over the past, since 2016 was when I started getting into the spiritual stuff. So however many years that's been, like 6 or 7 years. And now that I'm like aware of my traumas and when I'm getting into my ego or like, starting like once you become more aware, you have to start acting differently. And that's the integration. It's like responding differently to life. Because I started gathering all this knowledge, I was being activated, but I had to apply it to life. I had to take my hands off the reins and flow with life and let spirit take over instead of operating from that control space, my ego. Because that's what all that resistance is. That's when we're told how to be or what to do or how we should live our life, and what our mind and our overthinking keeps trying to explain to us what is logical. But most of the time what our brain is telling us is logical is what's logical to the matrix, what's logical to low vibrational frequency timelines. Okay. So this really is a purification process. It's releasing our conditioning. And getting out of our heads. And a lot of people are going through this right now. So I'm going back to the gym to ground myself. And I just want to talk about when I was activated. In 2018 is when I met Lance and I was activated. My twin flame activated each other. The weird thing is like I saw him around. We both I met him at the gym, but I saw him around for years and years and years and never spoke to him. He never spoke to me. I left because I lived in like a Virginia Beach area. I left there because I was married. My ex-husband was from California. We moved to California for a couple years. We still had owned a house in Virginia that we were renting out. So I went to California, came back. Lance was still there. I'd see him around. When I came back, I was divorced. Like that's when I went through my divorce and all that. I kind of had a little wake up call in California. Me and my marriage kind of fell apart, which was a good thing because me and my husband had nothing in common. It was time for that to happen. California was definitely not the place for me. I'm an East Coast girl through and through, and I belong in the mountains and where it's beautiful. There are mountains in California, don't get me wrong, but Cali was just not the place for me. Not the vibe for me. Anyway, so I come back to Virginia and I decide to go back to the gym after I'm there for a few months. And because I really had to go to the gym, I was going to the gym in California too. I had to go to the gym to stay grounded, which is interesting because before that, I wasn't going at all. I had my 4 kids. I was having babies. I was taking care of my family. Like, I wasn't worried about all that. But it was like, I felt called there, and it was because I needed to ground in this energy that started coming in when I started awakening. So my Kundalini didn't really get activated when I first started getting into spirituality. It was like when I met my twin, which was like a year and a half or so after. So I go back to Virginia, and the weirdest things start happening. I start seeing Lance, who I've never spoken a word to, in random places around where I live. Like one time I was at Walmart and had to go to the bathroom. And he coincidentally had to go to the bathroom at the same time. He must have been at Walmart in a different part of the store. And so he's walking to the bathroom one direction. I'm coming in from another direction. We just look at each other. And I swear to God, time stands still. Like literally it was like, you know, when you go underwater and you like how it sounds when you're underwater, that's how it felt. Like, you know, that weird feeling when time stands still. And so I was like, that was weird. And then I just go about my business and go shopping, right? And then so I go to the gym, and one day he said something to me, and whatever, we started talking. And then we started like noticing this weird connection, because when we would talk at the gym, we would just talk about shit like conspiracy theories, like all the, you know, all the stuff, all the rabbit holes you go down. And we were keeping it very like friend zone type, because we're both not the type that really initiates, obviously, if we saw each other for years and never said a word to each other. So anyways, we start like really connecting on a deeper level. And so he had to go through, like, he was still in his karmic situation, and we all have our stuff that we're dealing with. And then I was like, what is going on? This like situation is so crazy. And I started seeing stuff about twin flames. And I realized what happened, that we had activated each other. Like the first time we kissed each other, like I could tell, like, what the hell is this? I felt high. Like I felt like I was high on spirit. Like there was no reason for me to feel that way, but I was just, every time I was around him, I was like floating. The gym helped me so much stay grounded during that time. But he was feeling it too, and we couldn't really understand it. And like, it didn't make sense in the physical, from a matrix point of view, for us to be together, because it would have been very complicated. There were a lot of like karmic forces, outside forces, just logically and situationally, it didn't make sense. Like it didn't make sense because he had just come out of his marriage. I had come out of my marriage. It was like maybe a year before that. And we were both in just like this very like start over kind of place. And a lot of people were like, what's wrong? Like even for Lance, like, how do you come out of being married for 14 years and then you want to get with a woman who just came out of her marriage and she has 4 kids and he had his 2 kids? It was just like our parents didn't get it. Nobody really got it. And they were like, y'all should not be together. Like this shit does not make sense, you know? So the point of the matter is there's a lot of outside forces that were like saying, no, 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 no. And so like, but the connection would like kept bringing us back together. And then we would hurt each other because we were trying to logically think about why this makes sense or doesn't make sense. And we still had those things that we had to release. So for me, it was so much childhood trauma. It was so many abandonment issues. It was so many, like all of it. And then Lance had his issues too. Like he had experienced a lot of loss in his life. He had drinking issues, very much needed to feel validated by going out. And he was like a party boy. That's what he was, a party boy. And like, he is so charismatic, and he's like a magnet. People like gravitate towards his energy, and everybody loves him. He can like get along with anyone. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like, we would go camping in the sticks, and you have to understand, Lance is black. So, like, he goes, like, especially in rural Pennsylvania, there are no black people, okay? So that's where I'm from. And we went and we had our camper up at a campground up there for a while. And it was like everybody there, Hicks, who normally don't even fucking associate with black people or even understand them because they've never been around black people, are like in love with Lance, like want him to be their best friend. Like, and it was hard for me because I fucking hate socializing if people aren't like-minded, which is pretty much everybody. That's how it feels. It still feels that way. But so for me, I was like isolating, like I didn't want to go be around people, but he was so drawn to be around people. And like it was very difficult for me because it made me feel abandoned, right? So he was like always wanting to go, and I was always wanting to stay. And there was like, and that's how it is in the twin flame dynamic. It's like you trigger each other into that healing. My wounds trigger his wounds trigger my wounds, right? And so we were going through all of these experiences. And in the beginning, it was interesting because when I got, me and him both got activated, we activated each other. A lot of crazy things happened. And I think it was to validate our consciousness, who was just so fresh and new to the experience, that this was real. Like what we were going through is real. And that's when I started understanding like what I was going through. So like, for instance, like after we knew each other for like, I don't know, like 8 months or so, we moved in together. So there were instances where I would wake Lance up in the middle of the night speaking light language in my sleep. Like literally, that's like speaking in tongues. You guys can look it up if you want to know more about light language. I don't want to like go through the whole thing, but I was speaking like, and it was like not something of this world. It was something different, very different. And like, it freaked him out because he didn't really know what it was. And I didn't even know what it was at the time. And so it was like I was having experiences like that. And like Lance, he's a physical medium, which means he sees spirits in the physical. Like he's been seeing them since he was a child. And like it's not abnormal for him to see like a spirit in the room, watch it walk through a wall. He's always been clairvoyant, you know, but in the beginning it was constant. It was like he even stepped on something. Like we made a video about it years ago, but when we were talking about a lot of our experiences, and a lot of them are so faded in my memory, but I remember like when we first got together, one day there was like, before we moved in, he was at his old house. There was like a crop circle, like a small version of a crop circle in his backyard. So it was fall, and all the leaves on the tree had fallen like all over the yard, right? Except there was a circle in the middle where there were no leaves. It was like so perfect. It looked like somebody went out there with like a compass to make the perfect circle, and there were no leaves in it. Like just weird stuff happening. And then he was having Lance, a lot of times in the beginning, he saw little people, which was like the gnomes, the elemental beings. For some reason, he's connected to them for sure. He has little elf ears. I tell him he's a little person all the time because I'm taller than him. He's shorter than me, and he always sees little people, so we like joke around about that kind of stuff. But one time he was in his backyard, and he had been seeing them a lot. Like he'll wake up and be in that in-between space, like when he's waking up and he's looking around the room, and there's like little people. And a lot of times they're like they have a little mischievous kind of energy, like they'll smile at him or whatever, walk through the wall, be wearing random different clothes. Like the one time, like a lot of times they have their traditional little pointy hats or whatever. And sometimes, like he said, the one time one of the gnomes had like a little like do-rag. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it was so weird. And it just sit there and smiled at me. I used to get so excited for like his stories because he would always have some random thing happen to him, and I would have to kind of like pull it out of him because he's so it takes a lot for him to share anything. He's very emotionally closed off, and I'm like very outspoken and like share everything, like to the point of oversharing. It's like, why? But it helps people, and I know I'm here for a reason, and those things help people. But anyways, he would always have these stories. One day he was like chilling out in his backyard, and he was like on the deck, and I think it was just nighttime, and he was chilling out there, and he had to go to the bathroom. So he like stepped off to the side of the deck so he could pee. And when he stepped down, he stepped on something. Like he literally felt it under his foot. And all of a sudden it just squealed, and like it sounded like it ran off into the distance. And as it was running, like the squealing of it like faded away. And that was really trippy for him because it was so physical. And, you know, it's one thing to have it like an apparition be in the room, walk through a wall, like whatever, but then to actually feel it under your foot, like it tripped him out a little bit. We learned so much during that time, like having all these random experiences, because we were like it was like we were looking everything up, we were having these conversations. I was like online listening to other people who have like experienced these kinds of things, trying to make sense of things, because we're so new to all of it. Like I was just figuring out what the hell a twin flame was, and normally I wouldn't even care. I go through these phases where I don't even like want to use the label. I just want to say conscious relationships, because there's so many people that get stuck because of the twin flame journey, because they become so obsessed with the other person that they don't focus on themselves and the fact that they need to heal themselves, which is why I didn't like doing the one-on-one coaching. I still offer it through email, and I don't mind. If people come to me, it's like I don't talk about it. I don't really advertise. If you happen to see it, it's because you went to my website because you were that curious to go look at it, but not because I told you I even have a website. You feel me? Like, so I will take clients in that way, but it's so few and far between now, because that's not why I'm here really, you know? And I feel like I'd rather reach hundreds of people at one time than just do one-on-one, because my energy is better served that way. And that's how I like to be. I like to just flow in that way. And I just ask spirit, whoever needs to hear this message, let them be drawn to it like a magnet, because spirit knows what I'm about to come through with, you know what I mean? And they know who needs to hear it in order to grow. So yeah, anyways, back to some of the things that we were experiencing in the beginning. At that time in 2018 is when I started my YouTube channel, because I had this deep sense of responsibility to do it. It was like one day I just turned on my camera and I started talking, and I never stopped to this day. I'm doing it right now with you guys. Like I just never stopped. And that's how you know when something's your calling, when it's not about money. It's not about anything. It's not about anything except for this deep desire to do it. And this deep fulfillment through doing it. That you would do it whether you make money or not, you would do it. Like you ever hear people say like, and I know people in the Matrix, like they hate to hear this, but it's like, even if you didn't make money, what would you do because you love to do it? Like, that's what you should do, you know? And everyone's like, okay, that's cool, but where am I going to pencil that into my schedule and paying my bills and shit, you know? But truly, that's like, that's where I'm at. And that's where I was then. And so, and we also I used to have these, like, just getting back to like things that were happening to validate, spirit validating me in Lance of our experiences. We were having so many crazy synchronicities. And I've shared this before, but I'm just going to share it again because it was so blatant to me. Now, I haven't been, like, it's interesting when you have a twin flame, you balance each other out. So a lot of times if your twin comes in clairvoyant, then you're going to be claircognizant, clairsentient, whatever. You're going to be the empath, the feeler, right? And that was me. I was the feeler, but I wasn't clairvoyant and I wasn't a physical medium like Lance was. Like I was really receiving in a whole different way. But together, like we got it all, right? It's interesting. So anyways, I needed that validation. Lance, it was so obvious, the validation. He sees colors, he sees shapes, he sees visions, I see visions, but not in a clairvoyant way, not in a like, Like in the way, if you're clairvoyant, you know what I'm saying. You just close your eyes and you're seeing it all. That's how he is. Well, I wasn't that way, and I needed that validation from spirit because it wasn't so obvious for me. Like Lance was like, of course this stuff's real. Like, fucking look at it, you know? So spirit was bringing me synchronicity. And so this one synchronicity, I'm just going to share it again because it was so, like, to this day, like, trips me out. Aside from my first past life regression, which also tripped me out because I found myself in history. I even have my own autobiography, which I've shown you guys before. And I have a video on it. But this time, so I was watching this show on, it must have, I think it was Hulu, because it was like a regular ABC type show. But anyways, it was called Medium. And it was this clairvoyant psychic medium who worked with the police department to solve cases, okay? And anyways, she was married in that show, and her husband had this like birthmark or this some type of scar, something that looked like the shape of Australia on his body. And so she started seeing synchronicities of Australia everywhere in the show during this episode. And I'll never forget, she was like driving down the road in the episode, and like this van pulled up next to her at a light, and along the van was this advertisement to go on vacation to Australia, right? Well, I'm just sitting there, you know, eating my snacks, watching this show, and all of a sudden my phone rings. Okay, I live in the United States. I never get international calls. I never get anything. My phone rings and it says it's from Australia. And as soon as it happened, like, I was just full of goosebumps. And it's funny because I told that story before, and somebody in the comments was like, what did they say when you answered it? Did you answer it? I was so fucked up by the fact that Australia was calling my phone at the time that I didn't even think about answering, because I knew that was what I needed to see, that validation. It was like spirit saying, do you believe me now? Do you believe me now? You know, and I was believing anyways, but it was like, we need you to really understand. And it was like, it got to the point where Lance was like, I'm going to record you when you are sleeping and you're doing your light language. Like, I need you to see this, like, you know. And it wasn't even that I was doubting, but it was like so much synchronicity. It was insane. And I still get synchronicities all the time, but like some of the ones in the beginning were just mind-blowing because I needed that validation, and the spirit kind of knew it. And I know you guys go through that same thing. Like, you get that validation and you get goosebumps through your whole body. You're like, holy shit, like, this is not a game. Like, this is what we came here to do. We are fucking spiritual beings in these physical bodies. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. What else was it? Oh, I went through these things these stages where it was like, for me, I couldn't sit down a lot because I'm very on the go. One of my traumas is I feel like the amount that I do is the amount that I'm worth. It's like my production is what my worth is based off of because of things that I went through in my childhood. So I would do to feel good. And if I didn't do anything, I would feel worthless. And so I had to work through that. But there were times where I needed to purge. I really needed to purge, and I needed to rest. And so I had the ascension flu once, and I knew it was that because I have 4 kids. When somebody gets sick, we all get sick, right? Well, I don't get sick from my kids anymore. I almost never really get sick like that anymore. But nobody in the house. Lance didn't get sick. The kids didn't get sick. But I had the flu. And it was bad. Like, I was just taken out. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is not normal. Like, whatever's going on here is not normal. So I started to realize that I was forced into resting so I could really recalibrate after I was going through dark night of the soul after dark night of the soul. Because you know, like in your twin flame relationship, if you've ever experienced that, you just continuously keep going through these purges and these dark nights. I mean, the purges are extreme emotional distress you've probably never felt before. And the crazy part is, like, I went through childhood trauma. I went through so much stuff. And none of that even touches the emotional distress I went through and the purging I went through during this journey, during this activation. And this was all like, it was all interesting because as much as I needed to go to the gym so I could keep the energy flowing, because the Kundalini energy was so powerful. It was like emotional purge, but you got to keep moving, but then you got to rest. And it was just like, I couldn't even like figure out where I was supposed to be. And then I was supposed to try to integrate it all. And honestly, I feel like after you go through your purge, after you bring in more information into your consciousness and you have a deeper understanding and expanded consciousness of like things that you do that you need to let go of, because we don't know. We aren't aware of our bullshit behaviors. We aren't aware of where we're not letting go and we're trying to control life. So once we become aware, we have to make that conscious decision to do it differently, to respond to the trigger differently, to respond to life differently, to come from a higher vibrational space, to connect to source and flow with source and not try to come from ego and control. And so there's levels to that. There's stages to that. And so, yeah, so you would, purge, you would recognize something, then you'd have to integrate it. And then once you integrate that and you change that and you become a little bit of a better person, right? Like you walk in integrity in a little higher space, right? Then you peel back another layer. Oh shit, maybe, there's more. Oh fuck. You gotta go through more. It's like torture, but so liberating simultaneously. So anyways, prior to my Kundalini awakening, I was very high functioning anxiety and depression, to the point where I was so high functioning, like I convinced myself I was good, to the point where I didn't even recognize how depressed I was. I was so depressed, like deeply depressed about life. But I was like, no, you're strong. You're fight through it, And I would just fight through life. I'd be an overachiever. I'd do all the things and it still wasn't enough. It still made me feel worthless, but it didn't matter because I was just going to keep going and chipping away and thinking that I had to like strong arm my way through life. And then once I had my Kundalini awakening, it was like, I went from like maybe crying once or twice in a 5-year period to crying every single fucking day of my life. And it didn't even have to be about something sad. It could be like, oh, something beautiful happened. I'm like, oh, so beautiful. Like, just so, I finally opened up and became vulnerable and sensitive person that I am. And I'm so sensitive. That's part of the reason why I isolate a lot, is because I don't want to feel everyone's shit. And yeah, I can go and protect myself and all that kind of stuff, but I thrive in my own space. And I had to start honoring that. I would always self-sacrifice and go do things, especially with family. I would do things for my family, or I'd do things for my partner, because I thought that was the right thing to do at the detriment of my own well-being. And I really had to learn heavily to set boundaries. I'm still learning heavily to set boundaries because I'm such a giver. And and when you're a giver and then you have a hard time to receive, like that's a lot to work through when you've been doing it, for me, like 34 years, like doing it a really long time. So the first step was being able to set a few boundaries, being able to receive a little bit. And the more that you peel back the layers, the more boundaries you set up for yourself, and the more you're able to receive, because you feel worthy to receive. You feel like setting a boundary is self-respect. You understand? And we have to do that in so many different ways, not just with our partners, with our families, just with work, with everything. And there's never an ending to this healing process. So the more we have these discussions, the more I notice this just with me and Lance, like the more we have deep conversations about what we struggle with, the easier our healing process becomes, because we're able to recognize and become more conscious of ourselves. And therefore, when things come up, we can address them differently instead of repeating the cycles, instead of responding in the same old ways. And that's what this is all about. It's surrendering control, because the ego is not in charge. Our ego has been in charge for so long. And all it is resistance. It's just a bunch of resistance. And yeah, what else did I want to talk about? Yeah, unrelenting lessons until both of you and your twin release your ego. And the thing of it is, we'll never, I don't know if in these human forms we'll ever fully release ego. Like, it's always going to be there. It's that protection, that safety mechanism that we are naturally brought in with being in a physical body. And it does serve us in some situations, like when we're in literal survival situations, not because we're living in survival mode, because that's how we were trained to be in our childhood, which I totally understand that. That's something I've also struggled with my whole life. Like, just allowing somebody else to take care of me makes me want to run for the hills, because I don't trust, right? And I know a lot of other people understand what that is, and it's hard to see it. Like, those types of people are like, they want to save other people because they know they can do it, because they've been to the depths of hell and they've gone there so many times and pulled themselves out, that when they see other people in that struggle, they just want to save them. But they're also the people that have given and never had that opportunity to receive. And they don't even allow themselves to receive because they don't feel worthy, because they don't trust, and all of these cycles that we work through. And what we really have to do is come into that recognition. And right now, like, a lot of people are in those cycles and learning those things. And if you really want to have this harmony and this peace in your life, you have to let go. You have to do that deep inner work and recognize what it is inside of you that's holding you back, that's creating that resistance. Like, what does your ego look like? A lot of people think that ego looks one certain way, but everybody's ego is projected and expressed in a different way. And if you can really come together with your partner, if you're going through that, if you're in a conscious relationship, or you're on the twin flame journey, like, the best thing that you can do is have deep, vulnerable conversations about how you both are, where your ego is stemming from. And it's sometimes, if we are still too much in our egos, we can't have those conversations, because we're like, you, blame. And we're not able to really step outside and have an open and compassionate heart towards the other person, because we still are just saying, well, you hurt me, you did this. And we're still playing the blame game instead of recognizing the role that we play in it. Once we start recognizing the role we play in our own trauma and our own pain, then we're able to really address it. And that's really what the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to come and talk about today is just really understanding and being more conscious of where your trauma stems from. And then once you're able to see how your actions, or sometimes inaction, sometimes avoidant people, it's like not about what they do. Like, what did I do? I didn't even do anything. It's like, that's the issue. And so, like, it is hard. It is hard to have those conversations when you've been with your partner for years and you're going back and forth, triggering each other. It's hard to, like, set all that aside and really deeply get into that space of putting yourself in another person's shoe and seeing how you're impacting them and them seeing how they're impacting you. And it's not about them wanting to change, you wanting to change for the other person. It's about you wanting to change for you, because you want to be this person who walks in integrity. Yeah. And once you are, and you both have your shit under control, that's when you can maintain a union. Honestly, me and Lance, this past spring, we separated for 4 months, but, like, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle to maintain a union. It has. And it's been since 2018? Like, it's been 4.5 years. In a 4-month break, and the struggle is still real, but it has gotten much better throughout time. And honestly, like, I understand how I am deeply as responsible as he is, for my own stuff and how that shows up. And like, I just went through another layer of peeling back and understanding like how I need to show up for myself, most importantly, and then for those around me. And so that's really what I wanted to come on and talk about today, is just this purification process, this Kundalini awakening. A lot of people go through it in a gradual way. Some people are very spontaneously activated. That was not my experience. I did go through a ton of physical symptoms. Like one of my symptoms is I'm not grounded and I'm not doing being physical or stretching or something, like anything like that. The energy gets stuck in my legs and it feels like restless legs. And it's not always fun, but you learn to work through things. You learn to understand your body. You learn to understand who you are as a person, and you start understanding Kundalini. And you understand how you are supposed to show up in life. You understand who you start to see yourself when you're really connected to source, and then you see yourself when you're really disconnected and you're in ego, and you recognize those things, and you want to be more of that person who's connected to source. You're like, shit, I like myself better that way. Like, I'm digging that version of Kelsey. Not so much that other one, because it can get ugly, right? And I'm not afraid to admit that. And when you get to that point where you can admit that, because none of us are perfect, that's when you can really make the changes. Because you're like, then you'll start, when you're in it, recognizing you're in it. Like before that, you're in it, you're not recognizing you're in it. In the beginning, it's much harder to recognize yourself in it because you haven't gained that expansive awareness of the problem or of the projection that you're putting out onto the world. So yeah, guys, I really hope this helped you. Just a bunch of mumbo jumbo about the initial parts of my awakening, but we have to really talk about these things. We have to dig deep because it's about us. It's about, like, the union is the divine feminine energy, the divine masculine energy within you, being balanced, being able to come into this space of balance. So you're able to connect to source. And if your partner can do the same thing because they're willing to change and grow and come into their heart and be vulnerable and expressive, then it can be beautiful. It can be beautiful. And I know a lot of you have had those moments with people and you feel how insane the energy can be. And wouldn't it be nice if we could all just like maintain that a little more often? Not always. That's like being like not reasonable. Life isn't going to be perfect, and we're not always going to be perfect, and that's okay. We have to be easy on ourselves. But at the end of the day, like, it is possible to make your what's the word I'm looking for? Your default energy higher frequency. And I think that's what I've learned over time. Like, we start out, our default energy is like a lower frequency. It's a lot of projecting, a lot of unconsciousness about the way we act. And then we gradually, as we peel back the layers, we raise that default frequency. So like our constant state is mostly a higher frequency. Can we dip below? Sometimes, yeah, because we're human. But can we dip even higher? Can we have these really expansive experiences and like feel like really high frequencies? Hell yeah. Like, the more we can keep peeling back those layers, the more that our base frequency will be higher. And that to me is like what I strive for. There is no like, you reach enlightenment and you have achieved. That is the goal. That is the prize at the end. There is no end. There is no end. So once we can recognize that and humble ourselves and be able to take accountability in life, then we can just raise our base frequency and peel back the layers and really get to this space of peace and contentment in life and be on mission. That's when you're going to come into your mission. That's when you're going to not feel like you're reaching externally for validation from others or money or whatever it is, another person to fulfill us. Like that, if your base frequency can really come into this higher space, it's all going to be fulfilled from inside of you. There isn't going to be some job that's like, oh yeah, I'm making a lot of money now, so I'm feeling good. It's not about that. It's not. Or I'm with this person now, so I'm feeling great. Or all these people are liking all my videos. Hell yeah. Like, that's not it. Go ahead and try it. Go ahead and try it. Figure it out. You got to throw yourself in there and try some things, and just to realize where it's at. And that's just surrendering to source. Surrendering to that peace within inside of you, recognizing that all the love that you've ever looked for, all the validation that you've always wanted to receive, all the abundance comes from in here, and it will always start with you. And once you can raise your frequency, that's when you attract other things that are also of that higher frequency, and that's where that peace state comes. Peace and contentment. That's what I strive for in life. I just want peace in any given moment. Like, is that too much for ask for? But yeah, I love you guys. And I can't promise when videos come or anything like that. It's just me going with the flow. Every time I do that, I just like, why the hell do you say you're going to do this or that on your YouTube? Just freaking flow with it, Kels, because then you can't follow through and you're thinking about how you said this and you want to do it. And then Spirit's telling you to rest. And it's like, get out of your freaking head, you know? But all right, guys, I love you, and I will see you again soon.